at this time of year, as we're wrapping up the year, that we would bring back one of our guests that made a particular impact. Very impressive young man doing something quite unique as well. So without getting into a whole lot of preamble about it, I want to introduce you to Ellis Spezia.
Thanks for having me back. It was a really great show that we did a while back when we were sort of in the middle of the heat of the season and everything. But we're back home now in Jersey, wrapped up at the grand finals in Bahrain. So it's been a wild ride, but it's been a really fun season.
Well, give us a little bit of background about yourself first for people who may not have seen the first episode.
Yeah, so my name is Ellis. I'm a 16-year-old electric racing driver. This has been my second year competing in Europe, and been doing electric karting for those 2 years now, and it's been really great seeing the electronic racing scene grow. Did 3 series this year, one in Spain, one in the Netherlands, and one in Germany. So it's been really fun, and I'll move into electric junior formula next year with ERA.
Well, tell us a little bit about kart racing then for people who aren't familiar with it.
Yeah, so karting is basically the grassroots of motorsport. It's sort of that, it's as basically as basic as you can get. It's as the smallest possible vehicle. We're going all electric now, so definitely getting closer and closer to that performance that we really want out of that kart. But it's really just sort of the stepping stone and where all the great F1 drivers, any racing driver started in karting. So getting that, under my belt with having some success this year and using that as sort of a springboard into moving into cars.
So describe to us then what it's like driving an e-kart, because it's sort of like a go-kart on steroids.
Yeah, so pretty much. That's a good way. That's a good way to describe it. I'm sure a lot of people have seen the indoor karting places. That's probably the most relatable thing. You go and you rent a go-kart, and it's at the root of it, it's the same. It's 4 wheels and a steering wheel, but these are made purely for racing. They're as light as possible, as fast as possible. No seat belts. You're kind of just in the seat, sitting almost on the floor. And it's, in some cases, these things accelerate and corner faster than real size cars just because of the way they're built and how high performance they are. So especially the e-karts now, there's a lot of great technology that's being used even to research going into road cars and other applications.
I like how you say you're even almost sitting on the floor. I mean, you're basically almost sitting on the ground, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, think if you hit some of the curbs hard enough on some of these tracks, you can scrape the seat. So it's definitely a very specific craziness that we have to jump into one of these things with 30 other people on track.
No doubt. Now, I'm surprised. I'm not surprised that there are no seatbelts at your local mall or your local karting facility. But why would that not be a safety feature for you guys?
It really just comes down to there's no roof, there's no roll cage, so you don't want your head to be the roof if you happen to roll over. So it seems kind of odd and unsafe, but at the end of it, and we're not we're pretty much, it's not like a car where you're sitting really far from the wheel. Everything's really close together, so you're not sort of hanging out everywhere, and the seat does hold you in a bit, but it's just one of those things that on the outside it seems sort of reckless and unnecessary, but it does have its purpose. So.
Well, I suppose if there was a chance of a rollover, you don't want to be fastened in. As you said, you don't want your head to be used as a robot. I mean, my head might work, but your head maybe not so much.
No, yeah, and we can't scratch up the helmets. We got these nice painted helmets. You gotta,
of course,
keep them in pristine condition. So, but no, it's definitely a rush to drive these things.
They often say that people go to races. Well, they go to hockey games to see a fight break out. They go to races to see an accident happen. Are there accidents at the level that you're racing at?
Yeah, I mean, it's with racing, it's always bound to happen no matter who's racing, whether it's Formula One or what we're doing in karting. It's a part of it because we are so close to that limit, and especially on the big events where everything is on the line. Back a week ago, I was at a world championship for the e-kart, and when you're fighting for that title, people are willing to do whatever it takes to win. So it's not as common as it would be in sort of a rental kart or scenario, but it definitely does happen, and it's all a part of it. And I think no one goes into that race trying to crash into someone because it doesn't work for either person.
Fair enough. Now, I've had a chance to do a little bit of racing in the past, but we're talking bomber class cars. I'm pretty sure we had a seatbelt on, but I mean, the car might have crumpled had we hit anything. But even as a media person who was doing this race, we were told about little tricks to do to try and throw off our opponent. One of those little tricks included bumping the rear end as you're going around a turn. Now, are these little tricks that you learn as well?
Yeah, karting is full of that. There's always these unwritten rules of karting, and it's they're not in the regulations, they're not on hard print, but it's pretty much understood that, this is okay, this isn't okay, and it's tapping the rear end. That's a big one that always happens, especially when you're in the draft, like it usually happens with everyone so close together, especially with the electric cart. You rather be on the back of someone than lift off the gas. So, and there's always, once you're on the inside of that corner, that's your corner. You can leave half a cart, no cart width on the outside, and that sort of isn't as common as you go up the ladder in racing as the cars get more expensive. But in karting, it's very aggressive driving style.
Now, do you have an aggressive driving style by nature, or is it something you had to work at?
So I was working with my driver coach and my mechanic, and it's very, I get my elbows out when I need to, as I'm willing to have a little contact if it's necessary. But I usually like to stay a bit more calm, a bit more smooth, a bit more patient, instead of diving on, every corner. But there are times where, when you're in a pack of 5 people fighting for the lead, you got to have that aggressiveness and, take a gap when it's there.
Well, and you must have some racers that have built up a reputation too for being aggressive that you likely have to watch out for on the track, don't you?
Oh yeah, that's all part of it. Is racing is also, it's as much of a mental game as it is out there on track. It's, you learn how they drive. You think when someone's behind you, you think, okay, I know they're going to go for this move, or I got to watch out for them because they might take me out. It's all a mental game, and it's, once you drive long enough with the same group of people, especially in a full championship, you sort of learn their tendencies and can, drive accordingly to what you think is going to happen.
Fair enough. Now, tell our viewers a little bit about the kart themselves, how they're built, how fast they can go, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so the kart I raced the most this year was the Rotax E20, and that's been a really, really solid kart. I think it's probably the most equal kart that I've driven in terms of the spec nature of electric karting. So they provide the karts, and there's no messing around with who's paying more or anything like that. But at the root of it, electric go-kart it's pretty simple. There's a lot of little things in between, but at the very basics is you got your 2 batteries, so those power everything, and that's sort of the heartbeat of the kart, and that really what gets you going and lets you get off the line quick. And I think top speeds were getting close to 80 miles an hour, depending on the track, which when you're sitting on the floor, like we said, it's definitely feels a lot faster than that. But then with the batteries, is you got something to control it. So that's the controller, and that is kind of like the brain. It tells the motor to go, gives you all your data and everything like that. So those 3 components are sort of the almost like the body of the kart, and that's the sort of the life of it.
So when you talk about the data, is that data that you can actually see? Because I don't picture there being much of a dashboard on an e-kart.
Yeah, I mean, we got it's kind of like the size of your phone, so it's about this big, and it's on the dash, and we have all our basic information. So what our lap times are, motor and battery temperature is really important, because if those things get too hot, kind of like your computer, it'll slow down. So it's all just little things like that we check, once a lap, a couple times a race, just to check in and make sure everything's working correctly, and nothing's gonna overheat or run out of battery.
Right. So tell us what it's like. I mean, when we chatted with you, I believe you were 15. Now you're 60, and a veteran, obviously, of the e-kart circuit. And so I'm just curious, what is a day in the life of Ellis like?
Yeah,
during racing season, because I'm pretty sure you got your feet kicked up right now and you're just enjoying the Christmas holidays.
Yeah, enjoying Christmas right now. I'm hanging out at home, but it's a lot of gym training and mental training. But usually a race day on a final day. So the finals are a Sunday on the race weekend, and that's the big race. So that's the race for the podium and everything like that. Is usually we have a really early morning practice, so about 8 a.m. Me and my mechanic will get there at 6. We basically check the entire cart over, make sure nothing's loose, and we get the setup ready. And then we're out on track at 8. Go out, and we usually do with those warm-ups, we only do 1 lap to save the tires. And that's just to make sure everything's working. Nothing is acting weird, getting the full speed. The boost is working on that E20 because that's a really cool feature that they have. And then usually around 10, 11 o'clock, we have qualifying, and that's the time session that sets the grid. And then 2 races in the afternoon after lunch, and those are the big ones, and those are the really important ones. It's got to be dialed in, laser focused. And usually I'll do you see F1 drivers do it where they drop the tennis balls and I have to catch it just to get ready before we get in the cart, and lots of stretching as well to stay loose and ready with the downtime.
Well, how long is a race, Ellis?
Yeah, so it really depends, and it's something that I really enjoy about karting is the varying race lengths. So you have a heat race, and there's 3 of those in a weekend, and those are short. It's 7-8 laps, and that's really just like go, 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 don't hold back, 110%. And then you have a final, which is usually 15 laps, and that's a longer race. It's a lot more about keeping your tires fresh, keeping them in the right temperature, and then on those last 4 laps, that's when it's go. And usually you'll see everyone's sort of in a long train. No one's really moving around. But once those last 4 laps hit, then it's game on. Everyone starts overtaking and moving around and going for that win.
It's interesting you mentioned the stretching, because I'm thinking there's no way to move at all in that car to adjust yourself at all, is there?
Not really. It's a lot of pre-race stretching just to, be as loose as possible. It's really easy to get tired and, sort of lose your focus during the day, especially with all the downtime that happens on a race weekend. But the carts are pretty much every available space is in that cart is used for something. So being as loose as possible getting in lets me on track, just stay calm, stay focused.
So you mentioned that everybody, are they all given a cart, or are they all given options on which carts to purchase?
Yeah, so it's with the Rotax E20 is they have a raffle system. So at the beginning of the season, we pick a number. So it's, say they have a fleet of 15 carts, and I pick a number out of a hat. I have cart number 11. That cart's my cart for the season. And it's just so that there's no bias that they can, we'll give this person this cart and boost their power, or, okay, someone's spending more money to tune their engine better. And it's really, since they provide everything, it lets you as a driver sort of fast track your development. And when you're half a second off the pace and you got to find that time to be competitive, it's all you. It's not the cart. So that's something really special about electric, especially for me, since I started racing so late.
Well, it makes for a nice balanced field, I imagine. When you've got that, though, do you have that cart in your hands the whole times, or do you only get it on race day?
Yeah, so we have usually 2 practice days before the race starts, and anytime that we're on track, we have the cart with us in the tent. But for transport and when it's not a race weekend, they store and transport all the carts so that no one's tinkering with anything outside the circuit that could be seen as cheating. So it's really as close as the competition gets, and it's really cool to see 5 or 6 carts all battling for one position in a race. So it's definitely a lot easier for me as well, because I don't have to carry a go-kart around everywhere.
Fair enough. Now, tell us a little bit about your season, where you had a chance to race, and what that experience was like, because this is not a life that many 16-year-olds get to live. It's quite special. And from talking to you, clearly you're aware of that as well. So tell us about some of the experiences you had this past year.
Yeah, so I have my notes pulled up on my phone. Is individual races, as I did 52 total. If you work out about 10 laps a race, that's 520 race laps, just racing, not including testing. So lots of track time, and that's really what I needed this year to sort of level up. 7 podiums, and that's really something that is special to me, because getting those trophies, it really sort of validates my driving ability to myself, that I can do this, and I have that ability to race at the front and get it done. And then in total, we've been to how many countries? Been to a lot of countries. I think 12 total. Yeah, 12 total countries. So traveling the world racing go-karts is definitely something that's I could have never dreamed of, and I'm really thankful the work my parents put in to put it all together.
Tell us about some of the countries that you visited and what you got out of that experience, because I mean, travel is a great way to learn about other parts of the
Yeah.
world, right? Did you actually get a chance to see parts of the world, or is it just race, race, race?
I think there were definitely some countries that I wish I would have gotten to see more of. We went to Sweden for a demo day, and that was a really cool place to go. Uh, we went to Bulgaria. I did some testing and development work for another cart there, so that was definitely seeing the different sort of cultures around the world and how much they differ from each other was really cool. And spent most of our time in Germany. That's where where our longest championship was, and then probably one of my favorite places to go is we got to go to Spain, and Spain is just a beautiful country, and the tracks there are insane.
And the people everywhere. What did you learn about people as you did your travels?
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of a lot of languages being thrown around. Like I think there's one thing I need to do is probably up my language game of what I can speak, but most of the countries, the people there were great, and especially countries like Italy and Spain. When you go there and you tell them that you're a racing driver, it's everyone loves it because it's just such a culture there that isn't the same back here in the States. And yeah, that was just so fun, especially seeing the little kids that love the karts because they're watching over the fence, and you get to drive and you high five when you pull into the pits. It's really cool.
I chuckle when you mention the language barrier because a few years ago I had the opportunity to travel to Africa, and I went to Ethiopia and Rwanda, and I'd always learn a couple of words like "Hi, how are you?" And then as soon as you say "Hi, how are you?" people start talking to you.
Yep.
So the next line was always "I don't know." And so it's always "Hi, how are you?" They give back, and then "I don't know."
Yeah.
And then I went to the Czech Republic 2 years ago, and I thought I'd try to do the same thing. And I'm at a food court, and I ordered food, and I said what I thought was "thank you," and the woman looked at me kind of puzzled and said, I imagine, "Excuse me." So I said it again, and she goes, "1 minute," and she went and got the manager. And so the manager came over, and I'm just trying to say thank you. And then he went and got the owner of the store. The next thing you know, I pretty much decided I was just going to try and speak in English and do a typical North American thing, try and talk louder because that always helps people understand. And so it's quite challenging, isn't it? And you're popping over from country to country. It's not like you even have a chance to grasp a language for any length of time.
Yeah, and I think honestly the hardest one to grasp was German. Like German is such a strange language in the way that their vocabulary is. But thankfully, a lot of the places we went to, the race directors were all from the same events. So we went to Bahrain, and all the race organizers were from Portugal. So you sort of start to meet people and see the same people at the different events. But the language barrier was definitely a lot of charades and pointing and lots of Google Translate as well.
Well, and that's a great tool to have because clearly that wasn't what I used to have, and or even what your parents would have had access to, right? So
Yeah.
to be able to have Google Translate is amazing. So when you're on the track, you've talked about the speed and going around the corners, but even when I did the bomber racing, I remember at the start line, like I could not believe how fast my toe was tapping. Because of the nervousness, and it's just going like this. And I'm thinking like,
Yeah.
what the heck is like the rest of my body felt calm, but my toes, my feet didn't know what was going on. Like, do you have those nerves as you're going through? And if you do, how long might they last in a race?
Yeah, I think racing, obviously you always get nervous before the start, especially a high pressure event. It's really and when it's an important race like that, when there's a lot on the line, it's very easy to get in your own head. But I work with a mental coach, and he's really, really good. And we work with some stuff that I do before we even get out on track to sort of calm myself down. And that's really, really helpful. I think I always have a little bit of nerves, and that's something you'll never get rid of when the lights are on. But as soon as we start going, I just start having fun, and it's a blast, and I forget all about it.
Are you able to because this is one of the key things they say about top athletes is they're able to put their mistakes or their bad finishes behind them quickly and just move on to the next stage. Are you at that level yourself yet, or is that something you're working at?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's actually pretty funny. Is I do a much better job at that than my parents, specifically my dad. Is he likes to get very angry very quickly at race officials for penalties and whatever. But especially penalties are always the hardest to deal with because they're, you get pushed right to the back of the field. So I've had much more of an attitude of, I'll just drive faster and make up the spots. But I think I've definitely gotten to that point where I don't get fazed by penalties and mistakes and stuff that much anymore. And it's just a sort of fix it as much as I can and move on. And then there's always the next race to make it better.
Well, and speaking of races, tell us what it was like. So you raced primarily through Europe, but then you finished up in Bahrain. So tell us what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, but I mean, Bahrain was incredible. It's the Rotax Grand Finals. It's like the Olympics for karting. So every country has their represented driver in each class, and it really is, the top drivers in the world. It's really, if you could just even get to that event, it's an achievement in itself. So to be there racing the e-kart for the first time ever that it was there was really special, and it was probably one of the most fun I've ever had at a race event, just because of the size of it. There's 400 of us, and it's 400 world-class drivers all racing to become world champion for each class. So to be at that event, especially since I have sort of fast-tracked this year with my progress, to end off the season like that was really cool.
So what was it like racing there? Because I imagine, would heat have been a factor for you?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of the week before we spent the week in Dubai, and it was a lot of sitting out in the sun with a hoodie on to get used to the heat of being in a race suit. And the dust actually played a very big role, as it was when the wind would pick up, the dust would get blown on the track, and then all of a sudden, you have no grip going into the corner. So it was a lot of adapting and sort of changing as the race went on.
So I have to ask you, how did you do?
We did pretty good. I think we finished 7th overall. So to be, 7th in an event with some of the best drivers in the world, we got a bit sort of backtracked with a penalty that was, it was a 50-50. I personally don't think it was a justified penalty, but it is what it is. And I think, starting the last race 13th and making up 6 spots was pretty good. And with the whole weekend as a whole, the racing was really tight, battling up front. I think the first race, it was a 6-kart battle for the lead that went down to the line side by side with 3 karts wide. So to have that sort of racing and just being able to make my way through and finish in the top 10, I was really happy with.
So I have to ask you, you didn't think it was a penalty. What did your dad think?
Oh, he was angry. I think he, I always with, he likes to get really loud in the steward's office. So I always tell him, he has to come with me because I'm not 18. He's my entrant, so he's my representative in there. Is I say, let me talk. I'll deal with it. Just don't yell at anyone. Just let me do most of the talking for that certain scenario. But he did good this time. He didn't okay. He didn't raise his voice too much.
So he's learning too.
Yeah, he's learning. Yeah. I think it's definitely a learning process for everyone, especially situations like that where, the stewards aren't happy you're there because they think you did something wrong, and then you're not happy to be there because one penalty can really easily ruin your chances at a win. So it's a lot of just saying, stay calm, don't keep it together.
Right. So I think 7th is a phenomenal position to finish, and obviously you do too. But if you look back at the race, do you think 7th is where you should have been? Or do you think that you should have been able to, were there little things that you think you could have done that would have made a bit of a difference and maybe had you move up a little bit further in the ladder?
Yeah, I think obviously starting 13th was really difficult because you're starting so far back the grid, and then you're wasting time making up positions. I think if I started where I should have started there, which I think would have been P5, I think I could have definitely at least held that spot. And the main thing that sort of didn't play to my advantage was as the race was very calm. Usually when there's a lot of fighting and sort of battling with everyone else, you can really close the gap really quick. But the leader sort of pulled away, and then 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th didn't really tussle in the way that we expected them to. So it was sort of a very chill race. Nothing really happened. So maybe if it was a bit more chaotic, could have made up 2 more spots and finished P5. But I think considering the situation and what cards I got dealt that day, I think it was pretty much as good as it would get.
So how do you end up starting 13th then? Is that based on your time trials previous to the race?
Yeah, so we had it's called a pre-final. So we do one race, and where you finish in that race is where you start for the final. And I finished that race fifth, but because of that penalty, it bumped me back to 13th, which was really upsetting because fifth is a really good place to start, inside line, running down to the first corner, and just hoping that the leaders clash and take each other out.
So what was the penalty that would bump you down 8 spots?
Yeah, so it was down to track limits, and I got pushed wide by another driver and had to cut a part of the track. But even though I didn't gain an advantage or gain a position off it, they felt that it was unnecessary to cut the track, so they added 10 seconds to my race time, and that bumped me down to 13th. And really harsh penalty, but it's not on a case by case thing, as they have exceeding track limits is a 10-second penalty. Pushing someone is a 5-second penalty. So it's not like they looked at it and said, okay, we'll give them 10 seconds. It's in their book, and That's the rules that they have to follow. But it was just a bit of a rough situation where I don't think the penalty was justified to the situation.
Fair enough. Now, when it comes to e-kart racing, this is your first year doing it. So how did you see it grow over the time that you did it over the last couple of months, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, I think this past season was really a big growth period for e-karting. I think the grid size has got bigger. It's got a lot more visibility. I think it's starting to be taken really serious now. And with the way the technology is going, I say, we're going to be with the specs of the kart at a bit of a sort of sideways pace. So we're not going to see anything major in the next year. But I think in 3-4 years, there's going to be a big leap in the battery tech and the weight savings that we'll see that really big jump with the performance of the karts.
And so where do you go from here?
Yeah, so next year I'm racing in ERA. That's my jump to cars, so electric junior formula, and it's going to be a really, really good event. And I think the championship as a whole is really what I needed this year as that sort of stepping stone. So having that springboard to be able to say that we're with the first year of that championship and it's the first of its kind, it's going to be really special.
And so tell us a little bit about the cars that you'll be racing there, because obviously you'll have a seatbelt this time. So that's one safety factor.
Yeah.
But what are these cars like?
Yeah, so junior formula cars are sort of if you take a Formula One car and you sort of simplify it and shrink it down a little bit, that's what it's like. It's really single seater, open wheels, so open cockpit. It's really a really cool racing machine, and I think what they've built with their technology, it's going to be a really cool championship, and it's definitely going to be a hard fight the first year as everyone sort of gets to know the car and the regulations and everything. But it's really cool, and I'm excited to get onto a race car now.
So if you look at the electric vehicle compared to the ICE vehicle, is there going to be a difference in power, in speed, or what sort of things are you going to notice on the road outside of the fact that it's a lot quieter?
Yeah, I think obviously the instant torque that you get with electric, that's the number one thing. And over the course of a lap, this technology is so new. We're still a bit slower than the combustion race cars. So I think that's going to get better over time as the weight comes down. But chassis is the same pretty much. Driving style is a bit different. You got to keep an eye on the battery, make sure you got enough charge to make it to the end of the race. And that's sort of that energy management. Regenerative braking, so you can regenerate some of that power just by the energy that's generated from braking with heat and going into the corner. So that's another part of the strategy, and just lots more to think about instead of just being flat out the whole time.
And so when you describe that, and I'm thinking, what sort of speeds might you be able to hit in this vehicle compared to where you were at with the e-karts at about 80 miles an hour?
Yeah, so with this one, we'll have 175 horsepower, and we'll be able to get up to 210 kilometers an hour. So, and that's on gigantic circuits, which is really cool. We're getting to go to these proper race circuits, and seeing that going from karting where you see the whole circuit to just being able to see one corner, and then you go a couple miles. It's really cool.
So you're bouncing back and forth between imperial and metric here.
Yeah.
So with ease after a couple of months over there.
Yeah.
But 210 kilometers an hour, that's about 150 miles an hour?
It's
No.
probably, I think it's
Around
around,
that, hey?
125, 130.
125. So
Yeah.
so it's not a substantial leap in speed, but I imagine just with the technology and everything else, there's just so much encompassed with this leap,
Yeah.
isn't there?
Yeah, and that's really, the carts are always, kind of so I always say carts are sort of like the crazy little brother in racing. Is they're If you look at their size, they're way too fast for their size and their
Okay.
safety level. But Formula cars, it's a whole different beast, and it drives completely different. You have suspension. The brake pedal is 130 pounds to press it down full pressure, so it's a lot more physical. It's a lot more strategy intensive, and it's just a really cool thing to do.
I mean, it sounds fascinating. Do you have this fascination with speed? Is that part of it?
Yeah, I think for me, it's not necessarily just the speed. It's sort of like it's similar to chess, just going really fast. It's planning those 5 corners ahead to make an overtake, and planning the whole race ahead to make sure you have enough battery left, and stuff like that that I really enjoy. And the wheel to wheel battling is just, you can't beat it.
Do you find so you seem like you're more of a cerebral racer and looking at it from that perspective, but have you hit speeds yet, or are there speeds that you think that just might be a little bit intimidating for you?
Uh I don't think so. I think it's as a racing driver, you just got to trust in yourself. And I think when you have that trust in yourself, the speed doesn't matter. It's all with the way that driving is, and the way that I've been driving. It's being so used to that speed. It's sort of in slow motion. It feels like I'm just cruising down the road, but from the outside, you're going, 120 miles an hour. So it's definitely a sort of first person thing. It looks a lot different than it does from the outside.
Fair enough. Do you think that reasoning would work if you're driving on city streets as well? Officer, it doesn't feel like I'm going that fast.
Yeah. I think
So,
what we always say is, we paid for the whole speedometer, we're going to use the whole speedometer. But
hey,
it's no, I think I'm going to take my driving test at some point, and I think I'll leave out the part that I'm a racing driver just for, my sake. But I think there are real world applications where, being a racing driver definitely does help. Those situations where it's a lot of quick decisions if something happens on the road, or I'm sure about icy roads and black ice, having that car control to keep it straight. It definitely does help.
yeah, I know that I have no control, and that's basically, I've got winter tires and studs and weight in my vehicle. But you know what? When you hit ice, you hit ice,
Yeah.
and you just slide, and that's it. If Where do you see the future of e-racing going right now?
I think for me, at least, my sort of vision of how electric racing is going to be is it's going to open that accessibility to people that, their dad's not an F1 driver, and that's okay. Racing is a very business oriented sport, where your last name can mean more than your driving ability. So I think electric racing is going to help bring in those kids like me from indoor karting, sim racing, and sort of that other side where, okay, you haven't been in a go-kart since you were 2 years old, but you've proved yourself on a rental kart. You've proved yourself in the sim. You can do it in the real world like this. So I think that's the number one thing that I see electric racing doing, is sort of opening up that accessibility for someone that isn't a racing family by nature.
So that involves then the people involved in the sport. What about
Yeah.
getting people out to the sport? Do you think that it's something that will catch on?
Yeah, I think so. For me with electric racing, is I always say my job as an early adopter of this is just to inspire people and to show it off. And it's, there are some of those gas drivers that don't like it, and they want to stick with what they know, but it's a sport that's got to change and evolve, and this is the way it's going.
We talked about this last time, talking about being a spokesperson for the sport, and being perhaps a role model as well. You don't you don't seem to have the desire to be out there on the forefront, to be, I mean, hey, look at me, let's do e-driving, let's get rid of ice, let's get, and do this sort of thing. It seems like you're trying to lead by example, like, hey, check out this cool new thing that I'm doing. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's spot on. I think for me at least is, I'm not a, I don't want to get rid of every single combustion racing car there is. I think there's room for both, and even it's that thing that with racing is on the race weekend, it's not the racing that is necessarily doing a lot of the damage. It's the transport, it's the logistics. So if we can have our technology that we test and prove on a racetrack that makes its way into the, transport side of things with electric cars, electric trucks and stuff like that, that's the cool part. So gas racing it's still awesome. I'm the biggest fan of F1 in the 80s and 90s where the cars were insane. But it's definitely I'm not trying to get rid of every gas and combustion car that there is. I'm the biggest car nerd out there. So it's definitely not a this is wrong and this is right. It's each one can learn from each other.
Right. Now, I just have to go back a couple of questions. So you don't have your driver's license yet?
No.
Okay. So, I mean, I understand why you don't have a driver's license to go to your local karting facility. I'm not quite sure I understand it quite as much if you're racing karts. I trust that the next stage, you need to have at least a learner's permit, don't you?
So it's actually funny with racing licenses is it's completely free from your normal driving license. So it's by the main way that the FIA structures things, it's by power to weight ratio. So as I get older and I do more races in cars, I have access to faster cars basically. So I'll have my international license for next year, and that's because of my results in karting have let me qualify for that license. And now that I'm 16, so it's really just by how old you are and how well you've done on your previous license. So finishes in the top 5, finishes in points and stuff like that.
So then realistically, you could go through the rest of your life not getting a street driving license.
Exactly.
And be the world champion race car driver.
Yeah, exactly. It's always funny to explain to people like, yeah, I can drive, 100 miles an hour on a racing circuit, but I can't drive on the street. So it's a funny thing, but I'm definitely going to get my license at some point because cars are too much fun no matter where you are.
Fair enough. So like is getting your license, is that something that you hope to do before you head back overseas again for next year? Or is that something that's still sort of in the back burner?
I think it's going to be in the back burner for a little bit. We're traveling so much and going around that, having my own car and having a license just doesn't make sense yet. But I think if not this year, definitely next year, I'll have my license so that I can, split up some of the 12-hour drives to racetracks with my parents. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
I'm picturing myself on the streets taking my learner's permit, and then I'm picturing you on the streets taking your learner's permit as you gently nudge the car in front of you and go, but this is how we all drive. What are you talking about?
This is how you drive. I gotta get my practice in on the way to the circuit. Got to get in that mindset,
That would just be, I could imagine the driving instructor. You should just fail the first test just for fun.
Yeah. You start doing donuts in the parking lot.
Exactly.
Like, the clutch slipped. I'm sorry,
Exactly. I think that would be fantastic. So you've got your off season. Is there anything that you're doing in particular in the off season to prepare you for this new adventure next year?
Yeah, lots of neck training, really. That's the number one difference from karts to cars is the load on your neck is really, really big. So we got a cool tool called the Iron Neck to train my neck and get ready for next year with the cars. And it's fitness, nutrition, watching races, just soaking in as much information as I can, talking to people that are way more experienced than me, and just getting ready and being as prepared as possible for preseason testing next year.
Right. What is with the neck that you have to build that up?
Yeah, it's a strange muscle that, the average person doesn't really feel that much, especially with racing, how intense it is. If you look at Formula One, they're pulling 7 Gs in a corner. And it's obviously with the lower levels, you're not getting that high up there, but over the course of a 20-minute race, it has its toll. And it really is something that if you can start it early and not have to play catch up when you're older, it's really important.
Interesting. So you know what? I'm going to let you get on with you. You probably have some Christmas presents to buy, I imagine.
I've been really into RC cars lately, and that's sort of, it's basically like a shrunk down version of the kart. It's got all the controller, the battery, the motor, and I can, learn about electrical engineering and stuff like that. But I'm definitely got some Christmas presents to wrap for some friends and family. But looking forward to getting back on circuit.
Fantastic. Well, Ellis, tell us where people can follow you if they're interested in keeping track of what's going on, and especially with this new adventure that's coming up next year.
Yeah, so Instagram is where I post most of my stuff, and that's Elysium Racing on Instagram. And then my website is elysium.co. That's where all the, my results, live stream, and any sponsorships I want to reach out and get on board for 2022. That's where you can sort of get in touch. And but Instagram is where we post all the stories and the sort of daily racing life stuff of fitness and all that. So if you want to keep up with Elysium Racing in 2022, we got some good stuff coming.
Excellent. Also, LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, I swear, I'm finally old enough. I can have my own account now. It's big,
I swear. I just laugh every time I see a post, and I'm thinking I've been on it for a number of years, and I probably have done less than half of the posts that you've done in the last 4 months.
Yeah, we do lots. We've been doing a lot of press releases, and we'll do another one after that the season is calming down and announcing some stuff for next year. But LinkedIn, finally old enough. My my mom/race manager helps me with all of that, and they're really great at keeping everything up and running and letting me do what I love to do. And I get in front of the camera when I need to, and then that's pretty much the life.
Fair enough. Before I let you go, because you've mentioned your mom and dad a couple of times, tell us how important they have been on this journey of yours.
Yeah, they've done, my dad's been doing a lot of the filming and editing for all that content that we push out, and that's really sort of helped me separate myself from the grid and really show that we're doing things differently, and we're doing what people do when they're getting close to Formula One in karting. So if we can do that, then I think we're on track. And my mom, we say she's the general manager of the universe. She really is the logistics manager and gets us where we need to go. So she's really sort of the one in the background that sort of lets me do what I love to do.
Excellent. Ellis, thank you so much. You're such an impressive young man. I wish you only the best in your future with racing and with life in general.
Thank you so much. It's been really great to catch back up, and hopefully we'll talk again soon when we're in the middle of the 2022 season.
Sounds fantastic. Have a great day, sir.
You too.